The Vibe at Vibe is sponsored video content brought to you by MedCity News.
Hello, I'm Arundhati Parmar, Editor-in-Chief of MedCity News, and today I have with me Kevin Ritter, EVP with Ultera Digital Health. Now, Kevin, nice to have you.
It's great to be here.
Can you tell me a little bit about the Care in Motion business unit at Ultera?
Sure. The Care in Motion business unit is really in the interoperability and population health space. We are, with our flagship DB Motion product, one of our core solutions is we aggregate all different types of source systems, national networks, and provide aggregated and harmonized data for physicians at the point of care as well as for analytics.
Now, the industry has made a lot of progress on interoperability, but sometimes enough data is not available at the site or at the point of care. So what advancements are starting to make data more actionable for providers and care teams?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think we've made a tremendous amount of progress in the interoperability space. I think we've created standard pathways. I think we've got a breadth of terminology services that make data a little bit more usable. But I think one of the things that I think we still have a little bit more work to do is around data mobility, really, and providing data when and where it is needed across the patient journey. And so it's something that we wake up every day kind of thinking about because I think there's a lot of different things that we've learned about over the decade or so that we've been doing interoperability. And it's one, it's really important of how you provide this data to clinicians, and whether you're a clinician or you're a care coordinator, as long as you're part of the care journey, you're going to need some of these insights, and whether it's new data, whether it's clinical insights, or whether it's other things that you just don't know about that patient, it's how you surface it up. And I think there's a couple of things that are really paramount to that. Is one, I think we know caregivers don't like to leave and find and hunt for data. So it's important that you need to put it in their native workflow, and so they're not logging in different systems and doing different other things. And I think secondly, it has to be relevant. I mean, if you don't make data relevant to the particular care, the care provider at that point in the patient's care journey, it becomes a little bit of a nuisance and sort of delays that. And so you really have a short attention span to get those 2 or 3 kind of insights, data points that are relevant to that care provider at that particular time. And so I think that's critical, making sure that you're providing it when and where it's needed and in the hands of the right caregiver at that particular time.
So you talked about providers. Let's talk about payers.
Sure.
In this sort of data-driven era of healthcare, what trends are you seeing in the payer space, and how are payers leveraging data to sort of reduce costs and improve outcomes for their members?
Yeah, and so I think certainly payers have been using data really, really well for a very long time. When I look at sort of payers and where data is going, I think you really got to look at sort of value-based care and some of the risk-sharing arrangements that are sort of going on. And so I think when you look at payers and the way they use data, they certainly have to do some of the traditional things that go along with providing population health, so risk stratification, care coordination strategy, all types of other analytics that you do around with the payer space, things like patient engagement. But where I think we're seeing lots of use of data is truly around like the patient engagement and getting the patient engaged in some of the activities that they need to be a part of. Because I think when you look at things like patient literacy, not having a patient as part of their care decisions and really understanding what they can and can't do or should not do, I think becomes paramount in some of this risk-based world that we kind of live in. And so, I think it also in making sure that payers can connect their ecosystem across. And so, the ecosystem for payers, especially in a value-based care world, is incredibly broad. It includes, obviously your provider community, but includes things like home care and palliative and orthopedic services and all kinds of other kind of healthcare service arrangements. And so as we create these standardized pathways and this technology to exchange this data, it just becomes really, really paramount for them to connect their entire ecosystem so you really can kind of move that data in and out. And again, you're sort of providing that data when and where it's needed.
Now, AI has gone from being a huge buzzword to slowly, cautiously being adopted in healthcare. So I'm wondering, how do you think organizations will leverage AI when it comes to using a patient's or a member's data, and what excites you about this new technology?
Yeah, and so I think when we talk about large language models, we talk about generative AI and the use in healthcare, obviously there's a tremendous opportunity. I think people want to jump right to some of the clinical use cases that are out there, and certainly look at the success of like ambient voice that's had out there for, and the ROI around reducing physicians' pajama time, if you will, around documentation. I think that is a great use case, but I think the other clinical use cases are really hard to, one, develop a kind of a clear ROI for, and then obviously when you're talking about kind of clinical functions in AI, the bar is really, really high, I think, because you can't make any mistakes. And so while, and certainly a lot of the work we've done around data, maybe some of the more, I don't want to say boring use cases, but things like AI-empowered search, right? As you get more data and unlock more data, having the ability to search that data, whether it's inside a document, outside a document, discrete data becomes incredibly important. I think one of the other things that, again, has been around for a little while, but adding AI adds some level of steroids, if you will, is around natural language processing. And so we live in a world today where volumes of healthcare data is incredibly unstructured, and so to be able to take that unstructured data, turn it in some sort of discrete data where it becomes usable and actionable, that is incredibly valuable. And so I think AI is helping in some of those areas. And I think when you look at some of the mapping, and so we spend tremendous amount of resources and times with our clinicians and our data science teams mapping data, right? Because the history of healthcare data is it was proprietary. It was never really made to be shared across these networks. And so we've sort of evolved, and now we're trying to share data that is still, I don't want to say it's semi-proprietary, and certainly comes out with a lot of different codes and terminologies and so forth. And so leveraging AI and trying to maintain the integrity of the quality data is something that is something that we're spending a lot of our time as well on.